For someone who's never built anything, the prospect of building a tiny house can be nothing short of terrifying. But today, here in Hamilton, we're about to meet a man who's living proof that the rewards are absolutely worth all of the tribulations. Hey Matt, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, great, Bryce. Kia ora and good to meet you.
It's great to meet you. And dude, this house looks fantastic. Blue and white is just such a classic look, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. It actually, the reason it's blue and white is because I wanted to have a white roof on the house, because for sort of environmental and heat reasons, it works better. And then the blue just sort of kind of came out of that. I tried maybe 20 different colours, but the blue was sort of what worked really well with the white, and yeah, I'm really pleased with how it's come out.
And with the white roof, there is a whole movement around that, isn't there? Can you just elaborate for me as to why white roofs are such a good idea?
Yeah, so using a white roof, there's a temperature difference between like having a white roof on a hot sunny day and a black roof. So it's a phenomenal difference, and it keeps your house cooler and the surrounds cooler, and that's really important if you're spending a lot of time in a tiny house loft.
It certainly is. Now the parking spot that you've got here, this is brilliant because you are so very close to downtown Hamilton right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. So it's a 10-minute bike ride from here to my work and to all of the amenities of Hamilton and to the Hamilton Gardens and the river and stuff like that. So it's a really fantastic spot. So when I started building my tiny house, I was building it out in the country. But my friend Everett, who's you've videoed his tiny house
We
before.
filmed his tiny house, that's right.
It's a fantastic tiny house. He's the guy who taught me how to build tiny houses. But his family had bought this property and it just seemed perfect. So I hooked up the tiny house to a ute and drove it out here and backed it up a very windy driveway to get it to where it is.
And so can you tell me what it was that actually inspired you to build a tiny house?
Yeah, so I guess I read about tiny houses in a newspaper article maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was probably about 3 days in between reading that article and thinking, you know what, yeah, this is what I want to do. Environmentally, it's a fantastic thing to do. But I think for me, like more than that, is just the adventure and the ridiculousness of building a tiny house. It is a kind of crazy thing to do, and that appeals to me. So there's a lot of things about building a tiny house that are really appealing, and I think everyone has a slightly different cocktail of what it is that makes them want to build a tiny house. For me, certainly like the idea of being able to own your own home, but also not be tied to a particular place is a fantastic balance that you just wouldn't get in any other way. But really for me, it's a ridiculous adventure. Just the challenges, the learning that's come with building a tiny house, the fact that now I can build a house, and if my tiny house burnt down tomorrow, I would still be able to build a house. That's really valuable to me, perhaps as much as having the tiny house itself.
Because you did build this house yourself, didn't you?
Yeah. So basically the whole house has been sort of designed and built by me and friends, and a lot of other people have come and helped. The only thing that I wasn't able to do myself or with friends was, funnily enough, the plumbing, and I'm a water engineer, so that's a little bit embarrassing. But everything else, the electrics, all of the furniture, the curtains, the couch cushions, everything is homemade.
And can you tell me a little bit about the construction of the home and the materials used?
Yeah, so the house is timber framed, and I've spoken to a lot of people who've done both timber frame and steel frame, and everyone who does steel frame seems to regret it. So I'm pretty happy with my decision. It's a lot more forgiving to work with.
Yeah.
Shadow clad is what you can see on the outside, so it's quite a nice, easy option, particularly for someone who is completely inexperienced at building like myself. And then I've used colour steel on the roof. That's really good for use on tiny houses where weight is an issue.
And what size is the tiny house?
So it's a fairly standard dimension. It's 7.2 metres by 2.4 metres wide, which is big while still keeping it reasonably easy to take on the road.
Well, you've done such a great job on the exterior of the house, and I am super excited to see what you've done inside. Can we take a look?
Absolutely, welcome in.
Cool, thank you. Oh, this is absolutely beautiful. You really can see that a lot of love has been poured into the construction of this home.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of love and a lot of hours.
And the timber in here is gorgeous.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about what color I wanted the house to be, I'm not really into sort of block colors and stuff, and I really love the wood aesthetic. Love being able to see the grain of the wood, and I also really like tramping huts. I spend a lot of time in tramping huts, so there was an element of trying to recreate the tramping hut aesthetic. But yeah, the walls are just plywood that I've gone and whitewashed. So I mixed some white paint with water and went over those a couple of times, and it's just created this really sort of beautiful light finish so that it still feels roomy in the house, but yeah, you still get that grain coming through.
It certainly looks wonderful. And it's great to see that you've got a really lovely, very comfortable looking lounge area. That's so important in the home, isn't it?
It is. And it's a great place for entertaining guests. Just having a friend or two around for a drink or a cup of tea or something like that, it's a really good spot. It also can be rearranged, so I can put my desks in there and create a sort of a dining room setup, and you can have sort of 6 or 8 people eating at the table at the same time, which is really nice.
Excellent. Looks like there's maybe a bit of storage built into these as well.
There is, yes. With tiny houses, it's really important to be efficient with your space and to use all of the tricks that you have to store as much as you can. And I don't have a whole load of stuff, so it probably hasn't been quite as pressing for me as it is with some tiny houses. But yeah, I've got my 4 couch units that are full of tramping gear, clothes. One has got miscellaneous odds and ends, and the other one's actually empty.
Brilliant. Great to see that you've got the electric heater there with the fire look for a bit of ambience.
Yeah. And I did think pretty seriously about whether I could get a standard fireplace. I kind of thought it would be overkill having a whole fireplace just for my tiny house. And this was a nice compromise, and it does create a fantastic ambience, and it's simple.
Dining table here?
Yep, so I've got a couple of these desks, and these are actually made out of old oak floorboards that I got from my parents' house. So it's really cool to be able to recycle stuff like that, and really good desks for just general work. But they also tongue and groove together to form one big dining table, and then that's what I can put in between the couch units to turn it all into that dining room setup.
And how lovely that you were able to use timber from your old home as well. It's so special that you're able to bring those memories into your new space.
It was fantastic, and I did ask my parents before I took it, and they didn't let me have all of it, but they let me have enough for 2 tables. And yeah, it is really cool to have things that have come from people and places that you love, and to be able to put that into your house.
Very special indeed. And then over here we've got your kitchen, and this countertop is just lovely.
Oh, thank you. So this countertop is made out of all of the leftover macrocarpa floorboards that I had. So I sort of attached those to the top of a piece of plywood and thought that was a genius idea. It turns out that using floorboards as a kitchen bench is not necessarily the best idea, and so I found myself having to cover it with a coat of resin just to make it into a good sort of finished kitchen surface, because macrocarpa is quite a soft wood. But I'm really happy with the way it's turned out in the end.
The end result looks great. Lots of storage in the kitchen here.
Plenty of storage. There's a bit of a theme of me having more storage than I need throughout the house.
Always a nice problem to have. And you've got the 2-burner stove there?
Yeah, in general it's perfect for everything that I want to do, and I do a lot of cooking in here. So yeah, this is a great functional kitchen, and yeah, it's a great place to work in.
Brilliant. And what do we have behind you here?
So this here is my wardrobe. So I've got a whole bunch of clothes, obviously, but also some cleaning supplies, and I hang one of my sleeping bags up there.
Great, nice and easy. And it looks like this area here has been pre-plumbed for a washing machine.
Yeah. So this is all designed to fit the washing machine that I own, but because of the property that I'm on and the fact that it's kind of a bit of a communal property, I've ended up putting the washing machine in a shed out the back, and that means that other people can use it, and it also means that I have more space. That's a huge win-win.
Yeah, what a great idea. It's always nice when you can share a little bit of that infrastructure, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Great size fridge as well.
Yep, no, it's a fantastic size fridge. It's more than enough for everything that I need to keep in it, particularly, as I'm a vegetarian, I don't freeze a lot of stuff, don't freeze a lot of meat. So it's plenty big enough for me, and I've got a nice microwave on top that also does the trick.
Brilliant. And then I'm guessing we have your bathroom behind the pocket door here.
We sure do.
Cool, can we take a look in there?
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Oh, this is really cool. I love what you've done with that bump out there.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favourite features in the house. What I decided to do was build out part of the bathroom over the drawbar, and that means I've been able to have like a really nice big sink, but also to have all of that really functional space in the bathroom, so that it doesn't feel uncomfortable or crammed, and that you're not having to sort of scoot your way in around a sink to use the toilet or the shower. So yeah, I'm very pleased with how that's turned out.
Definitely a great idea. Composting toilet over there?
Yes, composting toilet. So it's a fairly standard bucket composting toilet system, but I did make the toilet myself, which I'm very proud of.
Very cool. Great size shower too?
Yes, it's a fairly small shower, and I wasn't sure how that was going to feel when I was actually in it, but it's absolutely fine. One of the features that I'm really pleased that I put in was a shower dome. And that, for a tiny house, means that you just don't have all of that moisture going into the rest of the house, which, when you've got quite a small space, it can make a big difference. It can, you come out of the shower, you open your door into the rest of the house, and you end up with the house getting quite damp. So, yeah, really pleased with that.
Definitely a good idea. And sleeping loft is upstairs.
Let's go.
Now, it's really interesting to see that you've decided to use a ladder here. It's been quite a while since I've seen a tiny house with a ladder.
Yeah, that was an interesting decision. So I've been in kind of team ladder for forever, and I'm a rock climber, so I'm the kind of person who you'd expect to be really happy with a ladder. And having built one, I love it. It's really cool going up and down the ladder and sort of swinging off the bar and stuff like that. But in hindsight, I have changed my mind, and I would go for stairs. Ladders are less novel at 3 a.m. when you need to go to the bathroom.
Very true.
And there's also the opportunity to put storage under it. So that's not a huge issue at the moment, but if I accumulated some more stuff, it would be useful to have that storage there as well.
Very true. Well, should we check out the loft?
Let's go.
Cool, after you. This is actually a super spacious feeling loft, isn't it?
It really is, and that was something that I spent quite a bit of design time figuring out how to get as much headspace as possible. So things like having the trailer a little bit lower than trailers usually are, only using 90mm timber in the roof, and then also using boards for the floor of the loft instead of the standard sort of 90mm framing, and that saves, all of those features. You save 20mm here, 50mm here, and it adds up to a loft that is extremely spacious.
Beautiful quilt you've got here too.
Yeah, so there's a great story behind this quilt, and actually there's a great story on this quilt. So my mum is kind of a patchwork genius, and she made this for me for my 21st birthday, and it's got the story of my life up till then stitched into the quilt. So yeah, it's a really beautiful thing that fits into a tiny house just wonderfully, and yeah, it's another contribution of my family to this project, and yeah, there's so much that they've done to support me in building this house.
What a really special gift. Legendary mum you've got.
She's the best.
So how long have you been living in the tiny house now?
So I've been living in the tiny house for about 2 years. It was sort of 6 months towards the end of the build where I was living in it, but I was building around myself. And so, does that count? Doesn't it count? But 2 years of sort of full-time house living.
Great, and how are you finding it's all working out for you?
Oh, I love it. It's luxurious. Well, to be honest, before I moved into the house, I was tramping down in the South Island for 2 months, living out of my tent, which is basically the smallest tent that you can get for any money. So coming from my tent to my tiny house, huge upgrade. And even before that, coming from flatting situations where you don't necessarily have a lot more space than this if you're thinking about sort of your personal bedroom space. But then in your tiny house, you've got your whole kitchen, your bathroom, you've got everything to yourself. So if you're a bit of an introvert, which I am, this is fantastic.
You're so right about that, because especially coming from a flatting situation into a tiny house, having your own space is just so special.
It is, it really is. And I'm quite lucky where I am here because there is a house that I'm parked next to, and I've got friends who live in that house. And so, if I want to spend time with people, either invite them over to the tiny house or go and hang out with them in the big house, I'm able to do that. So it's a perfect balance.
Best of both worlds. And can we talk budget? What did it actually cost to build this home?
So all up, this house costs $62,000, and that includes like the washing machine that isn't even in the house, and the fridge and the appliances and stuff like that. So yeah, $62,000 to build the house.
That's such a great result, isn't it?
Oh, I'm really happy. And 60 grand was the budget that I had. So I ended up having to take out a mortgage of $3,000 from my parents to finish it off.
That's not so bad. $3,000 mortgage, you can live with that.
Yeah, there are worse things. There are worse things.
And what would you say the future holds for you now?
Oh, a lot of interesting things. So I'm actually finishing up my current work at the end of this year, so on the 24th of December. and taking some time out, sort of 6 months to a year. So I sort of love getting out and doing long distance hikes. So I'll be doing a bit of that. I want to write a book, so that's a huge change from what I do at the moment, working as an environmental engineer. And eventually, I would like to get to Europe. Over the years, I've spent a lot of time going off on adventures. So I did a race in the Sahara Desert a few years ago, which was a 240 kilometer running race, which is kind of difficult to say with a straight face. So the tiny house, it sort of represents for me increasingly becoming a little bit more nomadic, having that freedom to go other places, not being tied down to things like mortgages. And then like that facilitates me spending more time out having adventures. So, you know, there was the adventure of building the house, and there's the adventures that now having this house that's mine and that I don't have a whole lot of debt on. It means that I can think about things like taking 6 months out, a year out from work next year. I can explore other options. I've been working part-time. It just means I can do the things that I love, the things that make me happy, that I have the option to go off and have all of these adventures and explore the world.
Matt, you really have done such a brilliant job in this home. You can see how much love and attention to detail you've poured into each and every corner of this, and I think you've created a truly fantastic space for yourself. Thank you so much for sharing it with me.
Thank you, Bryce.
Not only has Matt built himself an incredibly beautiful home here, but in the process, he's also taught himself valuable life skills that will be with him forever. There really is no question about it that this is a home that he can be immensely proud of.